Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we want to give our sponsors a shout out. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. Stay with us for the next 3 minutes. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director. You should be using them too. So here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Raise for their support of the podcast. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then got little, if any, return? Well, stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraising platform out there. We used it at our school. Tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. If you're looking for a fundraiser, go to snapraise.com. Check out their other platforms, but make sure you try snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Gipper. Go to Gipper.com, start creating world-class marketing content for your school social media channel. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 athletic programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to Gipper.com to get started. Mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, and more customization. That's hometownticketing.com. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their scoreboards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Their products not only generate income for your department, they create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. But when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to their highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. They're interactive touchscreen video consoles. That's right, touchscreen. Are going to help bring your school's legacy to life. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association management platform for the podcast. It's also your one-stop for things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't work on that every single day? Communicating with coaches, with parents, with kids, uploading rosters and digital forms. If you're an athletic director, Home Campus is going to make your job much easier. And all you have to do to get started is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. And we'd like to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you. It'll connect you to the folks you already hear from, the people that want to complain and gripe about everything, but that's only about 4% of your stakeholders. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you to the other 96% that support your program. And that's tremendously valuable information to have, especially when you're meeting with a frustrated parent or maybe your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're staying right here in Florida today, and we're going to one of my favorite towns where I lived and worked for a few years, Tallahassee, Florida. And our guest today is Dr. Courtney Beck. She has a tremendous background in athletics as a multi-sport athlete, as an elite gymnast. She's I don't know where to start. She's got an MBA. She's got her PhD. She is in the Florida State University sport, I'm probably going to butcher this, entrepreneurship, sport management, sport leadership class program. She's going to tell us more about that. But Dr. Courtney Beck, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jake, for having me. It's truly an honor to be part of this. Thank you.
Well, I think as we get into it, people are going to see that the honor is certainly ours to have you. You and I connected. We already talked about this through a mutual friend, Dr. Megan Bunning, with the FSU Coach Program. She's actually one of our regular contributors on our Wednesday Wisdom segment, but that's enough her. That's enough about her. Let's go and talk about you. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that bio. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Certainly, we want to hear about your high school and college years. We'll probably take a break there and come back. But what's the Courtney Beck origin story?
So the Courtney Beck origin story begins in West Palm Beach. I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I primarily grew up in Orlando, though, so I didn't know too much about South Florida per se. But my journey began in Orlando. And as far as I kind of view my life into like two segments, if you will, it was that sport, part, but then also the academic part. And when it came to sport played such a large part of my life. I had the opportunity to go into various sports, even during high school, but my passion really lied in the sport of gymnastics. I was so incredibly passionate about gymnastics at such an early age. It began, kind of at home where you're jumping on sofas, the typical story, trying to get the energy out, from the parents' point of view. And they wanted to put, of course, me in a safe environment. So that's how I got into gymnastics. And the whole jumping into the pits, the four, events or apparatuses really caught my attention. You always could improve upon things in that sport. There was always something to learn, a new skill to learn, something challenging all the time. And I think that's what I really kind of hung on to with the sport. And the levels I would start early on, I would progress, as you mentioned, to the elite level. And at that point, at the elite level, you're going 5 days a week, as any elite athlete could probably tell you, 5 to 6 hours a day, and injuries sometimes, of course, occur. But through these tough times, I think you always are able to reflect back on what you can learn during those times, even personal growth. And so I actually stopped the sport basically during my high school years. I was like 13 or 14 when I stopped the sport of gymnastics due to injury, just a little bit of wear and tear on the body. And at that point, I was able to step aside, go into other sports, but gymnastics always was in my heart. And so I tried to make a comeback 3 years later. So it's my senior year. I'm so excited. You're just about to graduate. And I go back into my gym. My gym was, Jeff Wood was the head coach there in Orlando Metro. And I greet him, 3 years at that point with a goal. And I said, this is my last chance to come back. And I wanted to give it a shot. There was no guarantee. But he was like, okay, what's the plan? And I was like, okay. I was like, this is what I'm thinking if we could do this. But it was that challenge of trying to make a comeback in the sport that I love the most. And thankfully it worked out. I'll certainly go into that, I guess in a few minutes, but yes, I graduated from University of Florida for my undergraduate degree there. And I did make the team at that point and did gymnastics all my 4 years. And contributed to the team about 3 years. My first year was just getting my strength back for the sport of gymnastics and became an All-American there and part of 2 SEC championship team titles there. So I was very honored that the coach let me. Rhonda Fain, I have to give her a shout out. She was an incredible coach, incredible person too as well. So.
All right, I got a lot of questions here. I'll start with college first, but I do want to go back to your high school days. SEC is pretty high powered for a lot of our listeners might not know that, pretty high powered gymnastics conference. I think Alabama might be one of the traditional dominant teams, but for you coming in, once you got, as you mentioned, your strength back and you started competing, what was your strongest event or maybe your favorite event, which might not be the same? And you mentioned oh, by the way, I was an All-American. Okay. What was the feeling when that happened, when you reached that accomplishment after having been injured and fought your way back? So I know I gave you like 6 different questions there.
Excellent, excellent questions, Jake. So, to first begin in college, because I do think it changed as far as like your favorite event or event that you kind of gravitated towards. But in college, you were able to specialize more. And I would have to say vault and beam were the areas upon which I could contribute to the team as a whole. And the moment I became an All-American, it was second team All-American my senior year. And it was kind of a flashback of all the 4 years to be able to understand, and this would teach me life lessons as I would move forward into my professional career. So the hard work, the dedication and commitment to a goal is so important in life. And I think that was really the actualization when that happened. All the support, like I said, the assistant coaches at University of Florida, like I mentioned before, Rhonda Fain is the head coach, tremendous coach. And my support system with my family. And this is another thing I didn't mention. I'm an only child. And so your teammates become your sisters. And to have, how many people, and obviously it varied year per year, but just say, 14 to 15 girls rallying behind you, cheering for you during those 4 years. It was an unforgettable moment all 4 years that I've experienced. And leading up to that All-American status, I was truly honored and grateful for it.
No, very, very cool. And congratulations on that. That's, quite an accomplishment. All right, going back to, let's say maybe the early days, your club, high school. Um, Sometimes I'll use that lead in. Sometimes I think gymnastics, like several sports, gets a stereotype for the parents. What's I see you smiling. What's your recollection of those, drives to the gym or competitions at that younger age?
So it's a reflection point because I even tell my father. My father, he raised me as a single parent, and so we carpooled a lot with other gymnasts too as well. And what parents do for their children is just unbelievable. I can't thank him enough, even to this day. When you look back and you think of all the days that you had to get out of school early, transportation, making sure you're on time, I'm so grateful for that to begin with. But as far as the parent, like within the sport, my dad actually was more of the standoffish, I guess you could say, type of parent, which helped me personally. I thrived in seeing dad come to practice once in a while, maybe that last 30 minutes or hour of the practice, especially when you hit those like elite levels where it's more intense, of course. But I was very grateful. I thrived particularly in that environment. My father knew, generally speaking, the sport, but didn't know the specifics or the technique of how to do a sport or a skill, excuse me. But I think that really led to my success was just, a little bit of a curiosity checking in, of course, from a parent's point of view, but not certainly going to all the practices.
Yeah. And again, that's as our athletic directors are listening to this segment, they're just going, boy, I wish, we had more of those parents. Thanks for sharing that. Hey,
Absolutely.
our guest today is Dr. Courtney Beck from Florida State University. We're going to take our first break, but we are coming back with some more. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Snap Raise for their support of the podcast. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then ended up with little, if any, return? Stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraising platform. We used it at our school. Tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. Go to snapraise.com, check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you should be using snapraise.com. We also want to say thank you to our good friends at Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. Start creating world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 athletic programs. It's professional graphic design made simple. Promote your teams, celebrate your athletes. Go to Gipper.com to get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Dr. Courtney Beck from Florida State University. Courtney, you took us up through those college days, all-American athlete. What about your next chapter? What are some of the stops you've made along the way that have brought you to Florida State?
Excellent question, Jake. So right after I received my undergraduate degree, I ended up coming back to Orlando, to home, if you will. And at that point in my life, honestly, I did not know what the next step was going to be. Those 4 years were full of academia, of course, and athletics. And coming out of that, I had certainly some ideas. However, I wasn't 100% sure. So I ended up going back to school, graduate program over at University of Central Florida, and received my master's in communication at that particular point in my life. And the next point was I wanted to go into medical sales. And where that kind of takes a turn there is my father was in medical sales. And so I feel a lot of, children, daughters, sons, if you see your parents in a particular area or field, if you will, you hear the lingo, you understand it. And so I think that kind of piqued my interest at that point, and ended up working for two different companies there in the corporate world. And I will say it taught me so many lessons. Building relationships, especially in sales, was critical to just the success in general. Being able to develop and have that rapport with physicians, with techs, with physician assistants, if you will. And I was in various fields too, as well, as I do mention within the realm of pharmaceutical sales. But pharmaceutical sales also taught me a lot about promptness, having organization skills too, as well, when you're scheduling certain appointments with physicians. And being on the road, I have high energy. And so being on the road constantly was really exciting, I think, at that point of my life. And I did that for about 3 years, roughly. And I needed another challenge at that point in time. And I always, in the back of my mind, I wanted to get an MBA. I didn't know what time that was going to be in my life, but certainly that was the time. Right after that, I had also just got married too. And so that was the next chapter, so to speak. So there I found myself pursuing an MBA at Florida State University. And as well as finishing, I was just about to finish that program. And my heart was telling me, like, I want to go back into sport. I don't know what that's going to look like. And so I went to a sport management conference in 2018, I believe it was, in fall. And I spoke to a professor there, and she just kind of basically said, just with your background, you should think of a PhD. Honestly, at that point in time, it had never crossed my mind. I was just thinking, okay, like, maybe I'll go, I don't know, become part of the athletic department or something involved in sport. Didn't know what it was going to be. And so nevertheless, I told myself, I'm like, apply for it. If you get in, then it's meant to be. And that's the track you take. And if not, there's another plan for you. And so I did. And I just finished that here in December of 2023. So I got a PhD in sport management, and I'm currently adjunct teaching here at Florida State University, and teaching, it's an exciting course, Jake, entrepreneurship in sports. So I'll just stop there. I don't want to talk too much.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, but going back, to that MBA decision, as you're taking that coursework, which again, Captain Obvious here, very demanding. Um, what are you thinking? Are you thinking at that time that there's going to be a sport athletics application, or was it just, and these are my words, just grinding out the courses to get that MBA? What are your memories of that time?
Great question there. I felt it was a combination of a couple things. It was a combination of needing honestly a challenge in my life again, and that was something I felt would certainly give me that challenge as far as the academic realm. I had always focused, I feel like, especially as you go through the years making it to the elite level, a lot of the focus is on academic or excuse me, athletics as far as like the skills, right? But I will say my father was such a contributor to instilling in me the importance of academics. And I always, obviously, as we all know in sports, you could get injured at any point. And so I do think part of it was I want to go back to academics and I want to see if I could achieve this at that point. And I had physically finished sports, obviously, at that point in my life. But I wanted to tap into more of the academic realm. And I knew that that was going to be a challenge for me at that point. So I think it was the challenge. I also thought to, with it, generally speaking, an MBA, you could go into so many different avenues, but
Right.
having a good foundation of business, marketing, finance, accounting, I thought was critical to the success should you ever go into management at any point in sport.
All right, we're going to talk more about the sports entrepreneurship and your teaching at FSU and other things too. But um, going back to, and again, these are my words, so you can say, shut up, Jake. That from my perception, academic grind of that MBA, I envisioned that. Was there a moment in a course, maybe it was, while reading a text or an article or professor's presentation, was there a moment that at the time it really didn't stick out? But now looking back and looking at where you're headed, you can say, hey, that was a significant moment. Anything come to mind?
Yes. I would have to say actually two moments. One, that was in the MBA, but just in life, kind of taking it back a little bit. But it was the moment that I chose or I made the decision to go back to the sport of gymnastics after 3 years of being out of it. That was the turning point for many reasons. Um, I remember speaking to my father about it, and he had so much support. He knew what I was going to be, obviously, like grueling, like as far as getting back into gymnastics, the skills, everything else. But his support really propelled me forward. And then, as well as Rhonda Fain giving me that opportunity, I truly believe those 4 years were transformational in my life in many aspects. As we all know, in sport itself teaches you so many life lessons. I feel like for me in that moment, it was don't let anybody ever tell you something is impossible. If you are willing to put that effort in, to overcome those challenges, the adversity, you could achieve anything that you want. If you could achieve it, or if you believe it, you could achieve it. And I would have to say that she played an integral part. Like I said, the support of family was big. But then fast forwarding, I think in the MBA program, 100%, it was actually it was during the MBA, but it was going to the sport management conference and networking, putting yourself out there. Of course, we're all fearful, at one point in time, just to meet people, to go. Obviously, some people are more extroverted. That doesn't, that's not a concern to them. However, it is. I think at that point in time, you need direction and guidance, and at least at that point in time for me, and putting myself out there, saying like, this is my background. Do you have any advice at that point. And being able to speak to a professor that would literally, I mean, get me quote back on track towards my passion. Those were the turning points, I believe, in my life so far. So I'm very grateful for those people.
I'm so glad you mentioned, that the networking component. That's something that I share with, young ADs and young coaches and old ones too, that it's just so important to build and establish and nurture, that network. So good for you. We're going to take another break. Once again, for our listeners, our guest is Dr. Courtney Beck. She's with Florida State University. We're going to take a deep dive into all the things she's doing at Florida State University when we come back. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. Their team of professionals is going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but things like school plays and concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their scoreboards and their score tables in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Their products are tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to their highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Courtney, you've done a great job sharing your career stops, and I think it's important for our listeners to hear about the journey, that we all take. We don't always, I don't think we ever, start out, right out of college with that dream job. So now you're in your dream job. Maybe you're not, but you're at Florida State University. You're part of their adjunct faculty. You're teaching a class on sport entrepreneurship. I want to hear more about that, but what are the things that you're doing at Florida State right now that get you excited?
So I would have to say, beginning at Florida State, excuse me, during my PhD program, it was the excitement of looking back at my career and how I could help young women. I founded Women in Sport at FSU, and it was WISA, so Women in Sport Association at FSU. And it was, the whole purpose was to be able to educate, to empower, and to assist with the advancement of women in sport. And this comes back to, it was truly my personal experience, what I had gone through, and what I felt would help young women as they go forward in their career during those 4 years, those integral years where you're developing, you're building that confidence, and before you actually get into the professional workforce. And so by developing Women in Sport Association, that was certainly one thing that I felt very passionate about, to help young women to make sure that they didn't go through what I went through. As far as, I always talk about myself as this ping pong ball, going from one end to the other, after college, really. But being able to hone in, to have that confidence to speak to people and to share your story, because people may have certain insight that you may not see yourself. So putting yourself out there, building community, networking, I think was critical. So that was certainly one thing, as far as contributing to Florida State University. But currently right now, as you mentioned, teaching entrepreneurship in sport, I am incredibly passionate about entrepreneurship in general. I think pulling out the creativity, the think outside the type of box, like that statement, think outside the box. I love that mentality. And I truly believe in life in various aspects, not just sport, but when you are able to encourage, and especially in this situation, students to have that creative mindset and to think, hey, maybe one day I could start a business in sports. Sports, my passion. What do I like in sport? Is it certain products I could come out with? Is it services that I could come out with? But I was so excited when Florida State added that class. And I've had, like I said, the honor and the privilege to be able to teach it. So I think it could certainly contribute a lot to opening up the minds of students as they progress forward in their career of sport.
Now, you mentioned that you created the Women in Sports organization or club at Florida State. I'm assuming that's still going. What are some of the things that you're doing with that organization?
So excellent question. It is currently going. I am not part of it any longer. I've moved forward, as we mentioned, kind of, we got to talk a little bit before, but into various other projects that I'm doing right now. I'm fresh out of graduating in December, this past December of 2023. And so it really is, 2 months into it, still trying to understand what I can contribute even at a larger round. So not even just sport, but building community, helping others, serving others. I feel like I'm at that point in my life where being able to help others through the experiences I've had, as well as to motivate others to go after their dreams, I think is very critical, I think, to me at this point in time of my life to help others.
Looking at I'm glad you put that in context for me and for our listeners. But you're at the beginning of your journey here as an instructor. What are some things that you've seen so far, at the start of your journey that you just have really surprised you, maybe in a good way? And there's an expression we use, maybe you use it to in academia, that regardless of where you're at, coach, athletic director, etc., you don't know what you don't know. Okay. What's something that surprised you coming into this role as a college instructor?
Surprised me? Let me think about this one. I would say truly how passionate I am of sport on the other side, if you will. So I coached at Florida State University the club gymnastics team, and I'll circle back around with this. But being able to be in the capacity of a coach to develop young athletes who at that point in their life truly passionate about the sport, they want to have fun, they still want to be part of that sport. I was so grateful to be a head coach and to witness the growth, to witness development of skills too for those student athletes at the club level. And then as I go over into academia, as I stated before, even opening up my mind to the PhD program in sport management and to see the other side as far as going into academics, like that was a possibility to really study sport and to continue my passion in sport. I think the most exciting, the most surprising, I think for me, is the passion that I have to be able to give to students, the experience that I've had with sport, thankfully, in many different aspects of my life, whether it's physically as an athlete, if it's being a coach, and now being able to teach sport. So the surprising aspect of how excited the students are, how excited the students are to learn about sport and to see the opportunities. There's so many opportunities to go into various areas of sport. And so I think that would probably be the most surprising is the passion that I have in sport at the academic level.
Yeah, no, very cool. Not surprising at all either. Okay, with what you shared with us today. Courtney, we're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but we've already talked about the importance of networking. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out and add you to their network, maybe just find out more about the program at Florida State University, what's the best way they can get a hold of you and connect?
So excellent question. It is C.A. Beck, so C.A.B as in boy, E.C.K, at fsu.edu. And I'm also on LinkedIn too as well, so Courtney Beck. And I'm an adjunct professor because there's several other Courtney Becks out there, of course. But yes, so adjunct professor there, you can look me up there and I'd love to connect.
Okay. And again, we'll give that information out at the end of the podcast. Our guest is Courtney Beck. We're going to take another quick break. I know that's shocking to our regular listeners, but we are coming back with some more best practices on the Educational AD podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Go to their website, vitalsignswalloffame.com, and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. That's right, touchscreen. It's a great way to showcase your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame. Once again, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Let them help you bring your school's legacy to life. We want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association management platform for us. It's also your one stop for things like scheduling, athletic eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every single day? And a whole lot more. If you're an athletic director, Home Campus is going to help you do your job better. Um, Communication with parents, with coaches, with your state association, with your athletes, uploading rosters, uploading digital forms with signatures. Home Campus does it and does it better. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. You're going to be glad you did. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD podcast. Our guest is Dr. Courtney Beck from Florida State University. Courtney, one of the things we try to do with this podcast is the idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Um, what are some things that you have seen in your very extensive career so far that you would consider best practices from maybe a leadership standpoint? Anything you can share with our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So having a vision, I think, is first and foremost. As a leader of a team, as a coach, whatever capacity it is, having a vision provides direction. And having that direction, if a team is following you, you're able to map out how we're going to get from point A to point B, right? Sport in general taught me so much about that. In college, the seasons are long. You have to be able to pace yourself amongst all the competitions to be able to contend for, to be on the big stage, so to speak, right? So you have to be able to initiate goal setting, short-term goals, long-term goals. And this even contributes to the capacity of your professional career. If you want to get to a management level position, for example, or to obtain a certain degree, right? It's marathon. I always think about that, right? It's not just a sprint, but you have to have the vision first to provide the direction, and then you start mapping out, the goal setting to get to that end point. So having a vision, number one. I would say number two, leading by example is critical for any leader. Being able to lead by example to build the morale too of the team around you. Having enthusiasm, I think, contributes tremendously towards any goal that you're trying to achieve. Putting in the hard work, as we know. As far as leading by example, understanding that you're not, even if you are at a management level, that you're not too good to do the everyday, the daily tasks, right? You'll get in there just as well with amongst everybody else, your employees, your team members, whatever have you, as far as industry goes. but to be able to lead by example, that it matters how you carry yourself, how how you goal set, how you finish something, right, from point A to point B. It's all about understanding um, how to take a team and to lead them to success. And I feel like leading by example is critical in the way that you do that, as far as your team picking up on that. And then last, I would say building relationships. I learned very early on about building relationships, always looking back. There's always like turning points, I feel like, in my life where I know for a fact I would not be at certain points without the help of others. And so being able, sometimes I still shoot texts to my club coaches, certain professors that really make it all worthwhile in the end, right? You're going through tough times, or you need direction, or you need help, right? But being able to look back and to have those relationships, they're not just you meet somebody and if they open up a door, it's like, okay, like that's it. No, but to really get to know the person. And I learned that as well in sales and pharmaceutical sales as well. But that could really set you, I think, apart of being grateful, like I said, simply for people helping you along the way, checking in with people years, 10 years before. So, or 15 or 20, whatever it is. So I would say building relationships would be the last thing to be a success in anything you do in life, not just sport.
Oh, very cool. I appreciate how you gave examples, from your own experiences with those. Um, you know, we talk about, people can uh, have a purpose. They can serve as a great example, or they can serve as not such a good example. Uh, Without naming names or places or location, have you ever um, had to deal with, let's say less than perfect leadership? And, what was that area so that our listeners can say, okay, I need to avoid that? Anything come to mind?
So that's a good question. I feel when it comes to leadership, I'm trying to track back even as I was an athlete and into my professional career. I would say not so much negative things that happen. I think it's how you react to different personalities. I really do. I think having those soft skills, being able to understand one's right, one's personality, how you're able to work with others, whether that be at a coach, whether that be at a boss, manager, I think is critical. So I would say I've had experiences with various types of leaders, or various experiences with different leadership. But I think it really comes down to, number one, what you're able to contribute, whatever that is. I mean, the professional realm as an athlete. And as long as you're doing that, then you can't ask for more. You don't have the control of what, of course, others say or do at that point. But I think it's critical to be mindful of understanding different personalities, because I think that's what's going to get you through maybe the perception or the perceived aspect of poor leadership, if you will. It's just really knowing the person and how to overcome it through your ability to produce the results that you need to do.
Now, I'm throwing a word or a term out here at you. Would what you just described, would that be an example of emotional intelligence?
Yes, yes, Jake. I felt emotional intelligence, it was actually spoken about a lot during my sales career. I think knocking on doors, going into various offices. Like I said, you experience it all. Different personality types. I was even, my family's from Pennsylvania, and I never grew up there. However, my father, for example, very straight to the point. I was born and raised in Florida, and so I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. But when I was in Philadelphia for a hot second in medical sales, but it taught me how I needed to adapt to my surroundings in those offices. A lot of the physicians, very straight to the point, and when I moved back to Florida, there were a lot of physicians, tell me your story. If it was getting close to closing, come, I just want to get to know you as a representative, right? So I think that is so critical, is having those emotional intelligence skills will take you far in life. Like, you work hard, obviously, to pair it up with, but to be able to understand people, understand their personalities, and how you could maybe even motivate as a coach, right? Being able to motivate an athlete, I think is critical. So yes, emotional intelligence, Jake.
Hey, I got one right. Good job. Well, this has just been so much fun, and you did a great segue from our best practices into our toolbox. You gave us some great tools there, but we're going to ask for some more, because we always wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you're not an athletic director, but you certainly know your way around the world of athletics. So we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor this particular segment. When we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. So let's hear from Athletic Surveys, and then we're going to see what Dr. Courtney Beck is going to put in her new athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of the podcast. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your student athletes or your parents or even your coaches, you're really missing out. Athletic surveys will connect you. They're going to connect you to the people you already hear about. Typically, the 3 or 4% that want to gripe about everything, the complainers. Well, athletic surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 96, 97% of your stakeholders that support your program. And that's tremendously valuable information to have when you're talking with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create that custom survey for you. It's going to help you take your program from good to great. That's athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have just spent a wonderful visit with Dr. Courtney Beck, Florida State University. She's not an AD, but she is, I dare say, an expert in all things athletic. But right now, I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let her put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Courtney, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
So I would say number one, being proactive. And what I mean by proactive, as we all know, collegiate athletics, professional athletics, is constantly changing, constantly evolving. It's getting more and more competitive, as we all know. But being proactive in understanding different trends that are occurring. Different trends, I mean, even such as we all know, technology is developing, it seems like every day, right? But staying ahead of the curve, I think, is critical for one's success as an AD. I would say the second is to be able to listen to those around you. So whether that be at your staff, your athletes, or even analysts that you may have surrounding you. A lot of those individuals are obviously, like, quote, on the ground, so to speak. So they may be able to see certain things that you may have not seen, and be able to pick up on something that could provide the institution, if you will, or the organization a competitive advantage. So I think listening would be number 2. And then number 3 would be following your intuition. I think at this point of the game, if you've made it to the athletic director position, you are an expert in what you know in sport. You are very successful at that point, but having the confidence behind your decision making, doing the necessary research, of course, hearing from maybe different experts that surround you, but at the end of the day, really trusting your gut feeling, understanding that your intuition could guide you as well. So I would say intuition, number 3.
Wow. People that listen all the time, they've heard me say this, listening. It was one of those skills that, and I say it's probably the most important one, but it's one that I failed to use until much late in my career. I wish I would have used it sooner. And your intuition one, I love that. Do the research, but then, trust your gut. Don't just, trust without doing that research. Very cool stuff. Courtney, again, this has just been wonderful. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out and add you to their network or connect, maybe pick your brain about all things Florida State, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
So first off, I want to thank you, Jake, for this opportunity to be able to be on your podcast. But if you would like to connect with me for the audience, I would say email is cabeck@fsu.edu, as well as I'm on LinkedIn too as well. So Courtney Beck. You could find me there as titled, adjunct professor of Florida State. So I would love to connect to expand our network and to learn. I've learned so much. I've listened to a lot of the podcasts here on the AD podcast, and you can learn so much from different experts, different knowledge, and different experiences that other people have had. So thank you for doing what you're doing, because it really does help a lot of people. So.
Well, gosh, you're very kind. Thank you, and it's great to have you on as a guest to share with our listeners. Speaking of our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in, and we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day with new content, so we hope you come back next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast.